Hello and welcome to Living with Intention Live. I'm April Wyatt, and I'm the host here to bring you forward more information about wellness, different aspects of wellness. And today we're going to be talking about breaking cycles and building what's possible. So this conversation is going to be about addiction, choices, and possibilities, as I have two amazing guests here with me today. And I want everybody just to kind of sit back and just think about how possibly addiction has touched your life. I know it has touched mine, and it shaped how I perceive the world. It shaped the dynamics of my family and also how I thought about community and what support looked like. I found that addiction kind of estranges us, right? It kind of silos us and creates a separation really to ourselves because our bodies are responding. The environment doesn't feel safe. We don't understand why the person is behaving the way they are. And then that also affects us psychologically too. So when we choose to interrupt that cycle, right, the shift is felt in every direction as we are the ripple effect, as I always say that. So we're here to explore today what becomes possible when someone has the courage to choose to rebuild with purpose instead of keeping that cycle of survival. And as I said, through my own family challenges, my father had an addiction to gambling. So it was very hand to mouth funds. It was the hustling for money, hustling to keep things together. And that really affected my family pattern and what I was witnessing. And so that also impedes on our own internal body and how our nervous system is set up. So when we start to begin to trust ourselves, right, having that rippling effect ripples out as we're connecting with others for support, and that builds a community, right? This is healing. This is learning to choose ourselves, to live a life with intention. And this is also why I choose to have or hold my Bali retreat, right? I want to bring people into a space, into a sanctuary of support to where they can feel more relaxed. They can witness old patterns that are coming up, old things that aren't theirs. This is those cycles that we're going to be talking about. And this Bali retreat is on the northern shore of Bali. It's away from the hustle and bustle. It is literally disconnected from electronics. The Wi-Fi is not good, and that's amazing. So if anybody wants to unplug, wants to get away, float in the ocean, come breathe and ease those tensions, the overwhelm. Allow your nervous system to relax so you can receive more of yourself. It is this year, October 10th through the 17th. We only have 6 spots left. And as you can see in this picture, this is part of the room that we're going to be in. And it's a beautiful space where we can release and connect with other like-minded people, and also go out into the community. We're going to go to a Balinese children's dance school. We're going to go to a waterfall tour. We're going to explore a temple that's 3000 BCE. This is what I love to do. I love to bring people into spaces to where they feel safe, they feel supported, and they can explore more about themselves, about others, and the community that's surrounding them. So if that sounds like something that you would like to explore, if you can see yourself right now in Bali, you're halfway there. So reach out to me, DM me if you're curious about it, if you have questions. I am here for that. And also, community is also another important thing, as when you're in Bali, in that community, you feel the love and the compassion from the people. They are very holy people. And also, you build connection with others in the retreats, and you really feel like you gain new family. And that community also ripples through with everything that I do, including being part of the Hounds of Business community with Mike Asherbranner, and also our guests, Troy and Nathan, are also part of the Hounds community. That's how I met them. And I meet so many amazing other people through the Hounds network. And it's just a wonderful place to come, to explore, to connect with people you would never be able to connect with anywhere else. And get warm connections leads to other people. This is what we do here in the Hounds of Community. At least that's what I do. That's what I love to do. So as we're talking about our topic today, right, breaking cycles and building what's possible, I just want you to think about what could be possible for you. What may be cycles that it doesn't have to be addiction, it could be anything else, right? Cycles that you notice that are showing up in your life that it just keeps repeating. And you wonder, how can this be possible? How can I shift to get out of that loop, to get out of that cycle? And we'll be talking more about that too today. So without further ado, I want to bring up my amazing guests, Nathan and Troy. Thank you so much for being here with me, friends. I so appreciate you.
Thanks
Thank you,
for
April.
having us.
Yep, for sure. Appreciate
This is
it.
going to be a great conversation. I have no doubt, as I've been on your show, Nathan, and also I've hosted you before, Troy, and you both have such a genuine presence and very open and sharing, right? You're not afraid to share, especially on the subjects of addiction. You know, people, it could be taboo for people. It could be very kind of sticky. And so by you coming forward and sharing makes it a little easier for others to witness that, you know, that might be happening in their lives. So I just, before we begin, I want to just bring us into a question here, because I know you'll share more about what you do and how you support others, but I want to bring it back to your own journey, right? What was that turning point maybe when you realized, I don't have to repeat this, right? And that you chose to create something different for yourself, or depending on where you were at in your life, for yourself or your family. And what was that like for you, that turning point when you chose yourself? Nathan, would you like to share first?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it started, in my 20s, April, I was very much focused on my corporate career and climbing the corporate ladder, and, finding that that success that us Gen Xers were, always taught from an early age. And I think we were talking backstage that starts so young for so many of us Gen Xers. I mean, I remember being in junior high, and I was supposed to have it all figured out what I wanted to do with my life. Where are you going to go to college? What are you going to study? And I wasn't even done being a child yet, so I took that path of going to college, getting good grades, all of those things. I got a great job with a Fortune 50 company right out of undergrad. And for most of my 20s, I was really focused on climbing the corporate ladder. And at the end of the day, I was searching for purpose, and I found that to be very unfulfilling. And coming from a history of alcoholism myself, my father was an alcoholic all of my childhood. In fact, he's 7 or 8 years sober now, and he's
Mhm.
73. So he didn't even become
Great.
sober until he was in his middle 60s. But, I grew up in that type of environment. And I want to make it clear that, although my father had alcoholism issues, he was the most loving man I could ever imagine. I mean, I never ever saw him lay a hand on my mother or anything like that. He was always very loving and supportive of my brother and I. What I later learned is it's probably how he learned to cope with
Mhm.
stress as a small business owner and everything that came along with that. And I found that to be true myself. I mean, I was really I was on a show a while back and I made the comment. I said, I was never more miserable until I was making six figures in a job that wasn't in alignment with who I am as an individual. And so you're lacking purpose. You're also ridden with anxiety in that case. And for most of my life, I was self-medicating uh, because I was unfulfilled. When I was in my mid 30s, in my early 30s, my wife and I started to have kids, my daughter Eiley and my son Nathan. And it was at that age that I recognized that my values definitely shifted. What was important to me in my 20s was no longer important to me in my 30s when I had
Mhm.
kids. And I recognized that some things needed to change. So the moment for me really was around the age of 35, and I was miserable in my career. I was asking God for next steps. What are the next steps for me? And I just remember lying in bed and I was just praying to God, what do you want with my life? What are the next steps for me? And I was really hoping that he would tell me he was going to have some great job for me that was in alignment with my purpose, right? And in that moment, as I'm sobbing, all I heard on my heart was love your family. And it's because I had really been so focused on my career that although I loved my family with all of my heart, they really had become second place to what I was doing in the corporate world. And rock bottom for me was age 35, waking up in the middle of my office floor in the home office with an empty bottle beside me. And I
Mhm.
recognized that something had to change. And for me, I was very lucky. I had tried different routes before, going to doctors and those kinds of things. And you're put on different medications that are supposed to mimic the effects of alcohol to help you alleviate this. And to me, that was kind of counterintuitive. It's like, okay, why am I replacing one substance with another? And what happens when I no longer take this one, right? At
Yeah.
the end of the day. So, that moment when I was praying to God for next steps for me and then kind of hitting rock bottom, I mean, I was fortunate enough that I had really realized that something has to change. And I literally woke up the next morning and everything that was in my house, I poured down the sink. And I had not taken another drink for another 7 years. And then I relapsed, and we can get back into that later, possibly why. But that was really the moment for me. Is I think everybody reaches that moment at different stages, but that was it. Waking up passed out in the middle of your house,
Mhm.
at 2 o'clock in the morning, your wife and kids are already in bed, and that was really eye opening for me.
Yeah, so that was the turning point then for you, like, just like it was a hard wake up call.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had really become a habitual drinker. So I mean, now there's all kinds of options for people that are trying to get off alcohol, right? Non-alcoholic beers and all these different beverages that taste good. So if you're looking to have something like that, there's options now, which there wasn't really a whole lot of options back
Mhm.
then. And so I actually, it sounds silly, I had really become a heavy wine drinker at that time. I started drinking like low sugar Welch's grape juice for 6 months, just to mimic that effect. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't totally removed from the habit.
The behavior, right? The
Correct.
behavior, the
Correct.
ingrained behavior, and
Yep.
and having that glass of something.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for
You
sharing
bet.
that, Nathan. And it's just amazing to even hear your story and that you were able to be aware of what was happening and making that choice, because I know it's not easy. It's not easy. And like you said, it just slowly deteriorated, and then, the rock bottom happening. And I know, Troy, you have a very heart, centered share also about your story with addiction. And yeah, if you could shine some light on that, and how you were able to recognize and pivot from that.
Of course. And yeah, Nathan, thank you for sharing. Like April mentioned before, it's not always the easiest thing to do, but it certainly helps people to know that they're not alone and that there are ways to make it through. And gosh, man, you talk about the moment when it finally clicked in. I got kicked out of my house. I was drunk in the middle of a day on like a Monday, and post COVID, like I mean, I've always worked from home, but then my wife was working from home too, and she was like, I think you've been drinking. And like tried to line my way through it like I had countless times before. It didn't work that time, and she I passed out in a Zoom call, cameras off luckily, but she smacked me on the shoulder, fired some expletives my way, and then said, "There's an Uber on the way, and I got you a hotel room, but you can't be here." And I didn't know when I'd be back. I went to bed that night not knowing. And it was that moment, like that night, I just called a handful of treatment facilities and said, like, I can't, like, it was at that point incredibly clear to me that if I did nothing, then I would lose my family. So Nathan, you talk about family. I had the same realization, and maybe a slightly different way. But yeah, I think that's a pretty common issue when you see those relationships start to rupture, and they're the things that you hold so dearly. And I guess in my case, like, never really thought that they would ever be in danger of going away. But then, like when you're drunk a lot, your mind will play tricks on you. I'll tell you that. And what a trick to think that your family wouldn't be at risk, despite like all of that. So that was the moment. And then like 2 days later, I went to treatment.
Yeah, thank you. And that's real. That's real conversation right there. Just sharing that, Troy. It's and there could be some shame and guilt, tied to it. From being in that space, for sure. Yeah. And so I know, I'm just curious, right? How did each of you work through that shame and guilt? Because that's what we put on ourselves. And this is just a cycle, right? It's a behavior. It's something that we just turn to because of the overwhelm, because of whatever it was that sparked us to, for that addiction. And then it's kind of compounded, right? As we're trying to shift away from it, then there's that shame and guilt associated with that behavior and what we've done to ourselves, to our family. How did you just kind of, tease that apart? How did you work through that?
Man, I mean, it was really for me a realization through, like, went to therapy like it was my job, like legitimately, like every single day, 9 to 5. But I kind of was realized and coached that all of that shame and regret lives in the past, and I can't really do anything about that anymore. but I can make good decisions right now and moving forward. And, I'm incredibly fortunate to have supportive family and like wife, mom, in-laws, all of that, who stuck around through that process and gave me the grace to earn their trust and respect back. But really, it's like, yeah, I mean, I can't go take any of that back anymore, but I can move forward on the right path. And so it's not too late. Like Nathan, man, your dad, I'm like blown away by that. Like, good for him.
Yeah, April, I'm not so sure that I necessarily had a lot of shame over my drinking, to be honest. And I think part of that is because growing up around it, it felt so normalized to me that I didn't feel necessarily shame in it, but I knew that it was not beneficial to me. And either from a health perspective or a relationship perspective or a fatherhood perspective. And it was around that same time, looking back in my 20s and early 30s, where I was really, just miserable in my corporate career, I was really searching for purpose, meaning, and fulfillment in my life. And I hadn't discovered that. And I was fortunate to be introduced to a couple of mentors that put me through a couple of processes that really, as you look back at your entire life, from your childhood, through adolescence to young adulthood, all of those things, and really kind of laid out my entire life in a timeline, and you see how things stack up and why you are who you are. And through that process, I really discovered that my purpose in life is to empower people to reach their full potential. And a lot of that comes from the feeling that I had of never really feeling empowered myself, or not really having the ability to empower myself. So once I discovered my purpose in life, and that lined up with who I am and my relationship with God, that really moved the needle for me. It sounds crazy that the most troublesome part of the whole experience for me, and I had tried to stop drinking multiple times. The question that kept nagging in the back of my mind is, if I stop drinking, what the heck am I going to do with my time?
Interesting.
And I see Troy nodding his head.
Yeah.
That he is in agreement with that to some degree.
I mean, I think that there's like, that is such a big one that I felt and that I hear other people talk about. And then there's all of these ideas of identity that get wrapped up, I think, in people who drink too much, or at least it's so true for me. It's like, yeah, am I going to be fun if I stop drinking? Like, what will I do? What will people think? What will I do with my friends? And like, what I found, is that I'm still fun, just not drunk fun. Like, and the people who only wanted to hang out with drunk Troy were drinking buddies and not friends, right?
Yes.
And my real friends, guess what? They're all still around, and we hang out and we have fun. And that was, part of my identity that I wrapped up into it, not other people, but I projected that onto how I thought they saw me.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point about the dynamics, how it shifts with friends, with the community. And I've experienced that myself with my husband. He is also recovering, and he has made that choice. And yet his friends have kind of fallen away. They don't know how to relate to him because of the drunk friends and, talking about old times. And that's what he said. He's like, wow, it was like a mask when I was drinking. And now I can see how they just repeat everything. It's the same thing over and over again when they get together. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying this is interesting, right? The behaviors, the cycles of what, in this case, alcohol does. And then that keeps them in that cycle. right? It keeps people in that cycle. And for me too, as Troy, as you shared so bravely about your wife calling the Uber, I literally had conversations with my husband over the decades. We've been together for 39 years. And it got to a point, he was in the Navy. So you pull into port, it's binge drinking, right? Get back on the ship, it's dry. Get into port, binge drinking. So all these crazy bills that we had when he was in port. And I'm like, okay, well, he's having fun, he's blowing off steam, that kind of thing. But when he got home, that behavior continued. And so it wasn't until we moved back here to Iowa, and there was a huge point to where I was, just as you said, your wife said, I didn't say it very gently, to him, you need to make this choice. And obviously you can't choose for me. So you need to choose for yourself, and you need to choose for your son. Because I knew, and this sounds kind of strange, but some parents might understand, I knew that my husband adored our son. And this whole time I've been on this journey with him, not that he doesn't love me, but he would do anything for our son. So I said, you make that choice and you go in there, dump the bottle out in the sink, and you tell our son what you've been doing. He actually did it. And that was the last day he drank.
Wow.
So it's breaking those cycles. Sometimes it has to be like that, or maybe a God moment, such as with Nathan, just pleading, asking, wanting more for ourselves, or the backdoor approach. I'm going to do this for someone else, but they're really doing it for themselves in the long run. Yeah.
April, you mentioned that story about your husband sharing that with your son. That was an eye-opening experience for me when I was actually grocery shopping with my wife and my daughter, who was probably maybe 2.5. And we're in an aisle that you have water and soda on one side, and you have beers and alcoholic beverages right on the other side. And my daughter's in the shopping cart and she points and says, Dada. Wow. Even at that age, she noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm curious about you both, right? As you made that choice, breaking those cycles, how has the relationships with your children shifted, with your family unit?
Oh yeah. I mean, the house is much more stable. And I think it starts with the relationship with me and my wife, and then goes down from there. My kids were pretty young, luckily. Like they were like 2 and 5 or something like that. So I'm just like grateful that it worked out that way, that I could like change those things before they were older. So, I mean, for my youngest, especially, like he won't remember any of that, so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, the whole, it's amazing, like up on time. The day doesn't start with chaos. Like I'm ready to go when they're ready to go. Like energy is high. I'm, less moody. It's changed everything. And I did see a question from Cynthia there. Yeah, biggest advice. Yeah. So I think like Nathan, I had known this was an issue, didn't realize how big of an issue it was going to become. And I had none of my friends had talked about this. I mean, since they watched me go through this, many of them have changed their own behaviors, because I think that they saw like, ooh, maybe, like, listen, people who binge drink hang out with people who binge drink. This is like, been studied. So, but I was the first one to really confront it, and I just had no idea. So I just called the treatment facility. But if I had to go back and do it over again, I would say that there are plenty of people and resources who will sit down and talk to you and have an honest conversation about it without judgment than I thought there would be. And so if you're not quite ready to just dive into something, I mean, like, there are plenty of places, like, it's kind of intimidating maybe to like go to an AA meeting. I don't go regularly anymore, but it was part of the early part of my recovery. And I will say this, that it was amazing to be in a room with people who shared so openly, and they said words out loud that I had only said inside of my own head. And then I said, oh my God, like, I'm not the only one. I said this before, but like, just understanding that you are not alone and that there are people out there to help you is the biggest thing. So advice from that is like, just realize that you are not alone and there are people out there who will help you if you ask them, but you have to ask.
Yes, you have to be ready for that. Nathan, what advice do you have to that question that Cynthia asked, where for people who don't know where to start?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and you have to find what works for you. I mean, I had shared earlier about, I had gone to doctors multiple times. They would put me on different medications, and that did not work for me. I mean, what worked for me was spiritual in nature and finding purpose, meaning, and fulfillment in my life. And also getting out of the environment that was causing the misery for me in the first place, and the reason that I was self-medicating or coping, whatever you want to call it. And I was fortunate that, in the early phases when I was 35 and quit drinking for 7 years, my kids were very young, in my early 30s, so they didn't see a lot of that. But then later on in my life, I started working with another organization in a fairly high level capacity. So I had a lot of meetings with senior leaders inside of that organization, high-end dinners and those kinds of things. And it was very much a party culture. Mm-hmm. So here I am in high-end meetings, $100 meals per person and those kinds of things. You have individuals who are buying you, high-end bourbons and those kinds of things. And it was so easy for me to be sucked back in to being an alcoholic again. And that's when my kids were older and began to see the impact that it had on my life. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a position at that time to change my circle, if that makes sense. I think choosing your circle of influence, who you choose to hang out with, is so important. Mm-hmm. Jim Rohn said we are the average of the 5 people that we hang around the most, right? At the end of the day. Because early on when I stopped drinking, my college buddies and those kinds of things, you would hear, well, what's the deal? Do you think you're better than us?
Yes.
So there's a lot of this peer pressure to continue drinking. And I just had to completely remove myself from those environments. But then I, like I said, I relapsed, working with another organization and trying to fit in, I guess. And it was readily available. And I finally got to a point to where my drinking subsided considerably. And I was only, drinking when my wife and I would go out to dinner. I would have a couple of old fashions with a steak dinner or something like that. But Troy, COVID hit me really hard. COVID hit me really hard, and it was really back to about the same place that I was when I was in my middle 30s. And I'm like, wow, here I am finding myself in this space again, and my kids see the impact that it has, right? On me, on my relationship with my wife, on my relationship with them. And I finally realized that just because something is legal or whatever doesn't mean that it's beneficial to me, right? And I had to just completely set aside. And the benefit for that is to my kids is that they've seen that, one, I am a very flawed individual, right? We all are. And at the end of the day, I was able to overcome that and be the better for it on the backside. And now, I mean, it's almost like it's a ministry for me. I mean, I serve locally at my church on Sundays, and I'm a connections leader with Life Church here in Oklahoma. And we kind of meet people on their next steps, with the relationship with Christ. And it is amazing how many people who raise their hands and commit their life to Christ come to me in the back of the room and they're struggling with addiction. And I don't think that is happenstance. So God is putting people into my life that I can serve. And that is really the path to healing, I think, is when you can take your story and steward your story and your experiences and use it to serve others. I think that is, Troy, I never went to AA meetings, but a similar concept, right? You have people there that are helping other people overcome their addiction. And I think that is one of the things that really helps keep me sober to this day, is that part of my purpose in empowering others to help them overcome the things that I have struggled with in my life. So I share my testimony when it's relevant. I think it's important that you meet people where they are at, lend them an empathetic ear and share your testimony where it's relevant. And what happens to that is you kind of serve as a mirror to them. And when they see bits and pieces of your story in them, it gives them hope and faith that they too can overcome it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nathan, for sharing that and the work that you're doing in your community. That's what it's all about. We want people to know that there is options, that things can be possible. And it's just trusting in our higher power, trusting in ourselves and taking that first step, however that looks. And so you both have made a big impact. Nathan, how you have your lead empowered coaching, and Troy, you wrote a book, No Silver Bullets. Look at that. I even have, pages dog-eared and things. Maybe we'll get to one section that I kind of bookmarked here for us.
You make me blush.
And so it's our life experiences. As I said in the very beginning, we are the ripple effect, and how we relate to ourselves first and foremost, that ripples out to others, to the community. So for each of you, how have you noticed, these lessons that you've learned have influenced either your coaching or how you came to write the book, Troy? Troy, since I brought up the book, do you mind sharing more about that?
Sure. I was just under 100 days sober, and I got a pretty nasty cancer diagnosis. I had my surgeon called it big, scary, dangerous, rare cancer. Like, well, that's bingo. Right. And it was a bone cancer, and it ended up, taking my shoulder blade out. So I'm missing a shoulder blade. But that I'm so grateful it happened in that order, because if I got that diagnosis before I stopped drinking, like, who knows, I would have drank my way through that whole thing. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest lessons that I took out of my treatment and helped me stay sober through that experience was that, and this is something that I tell people is true whether you have issues with addiction or not, but nobody makes good decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Halt. And I took that framework and said, well, what if I get kind of proactive about those things, right? So cleaned up my diet, have a practice where I journal every day to process my emotions. I, reach out to friends and family very intentionally to make sure that I'm not feeling alone, and then prioritize sleep and exercise. And you'll be amazed how far just kind of those little habits will get you, and how they will help you deal with whatever comes your way, right? I mean, mine were pretty extreme, but everybody goes through challenges in life, right? Like, nobody has it easy. So it is a practice that I've kind of just built my life around and has helped me tremendously.
Yes. And I'll add, since we're talking about your book here, no silver bullets.
Yeah. And I think kind of the point about your life not being broken and stop trying to fix is that we look for hacks all the time. Like what's the one thing I can do to take care of this? And I used to do this all the time. I see business leaders do this all the time, where they get just caught in the cycle of trying to solve problems all the time. And when I looked at the issue I ran into is these problems, cancer, addiction, I have a son on the spectrum. None of these things have an end. They will continue to affect my life until I die. So there is no solution to them. But so why am I trying to treat them like problems that are going to get fixed, like a flat tire, right? They're not. So if I treat them like chronic diseases and just manage and maintain them on a regular basis, then I'm going to put myself in a better position to manage it. And so that's the reason behind the subtitle and the title altogether, right? Yeah, no silver bullets. There's not one thing that's going to fix most of the big issues that people deal with.
Yeah, and you have had quite a book tour. You were all over the place, sharing your story and sharing about this. What was the responses in the community that you went into? It's
so good, just so good. I'm so like I said, you're gonna make me blush, but the response has been great, and it's really cool to have people reach out and just say like, oh, I underlined this part, or I dog-eared this part of the book, or oh, I got to ask you about X, Y, or Z, and then like Nathan said, just lots of people reaching out and saying like, I might need a little help or advice here or something. So I end up getting a lot of those phone calls from people, not only about their drinking, but this webinar is not about cancer, but I get a lot of those phone calls too, unfortunately, with people who either have a diagnosis or somebody in their family gets a diagnosis. And then that is a scary thing. And a lot of like, what do you do now? But to be honest, a lot of the advice is the same. Like, when I get those calls, like, how are you eating? Are you sleeping? How are you dealing with your emotions? Are you talking to people, or are you isolating? It's a playbook that works for dealing with crisis.
Yes. And it gives really good points. I mean, I highly encourage people to read this. I absolutely loved it, and your kind of humor in it, kind of sprinkled throughout it, is fun. Yeah, and
an audiobook is not. You can just get it on Audible. I read it in my closet.
You're a closet reader. Yeah. Yes, so that's the book. They could probably find it right on your link that we're going to share later.
They could go to troycarnes.com. It's up there, or it's on Amazon and Audible and all that.
Awesome. Thank you for writing that, and also influencing people, letting them know, you don't have to be alone going through this too. Yeah. And Nathan, with you and your coaching with, CEOs and business execs, how has your experience, how is that kind of woven into your approach for coaching?
Yeah, well, I'm first and foremost a leadership coach. I'm certified in mindset, leadership, and teamwork, but I also work with small and mid-sized businesses. I help them create high-performing, burnout-free cultures through empowered leaders and aligned teams using a system called the 5 Voices framework. But going back to the whole leadership coaching piece, leadership coaching really starts with helping people increase their self-awareness and being the best version of themselves and leading themselves well. It's really hard to lead others well until you can lead yourselves well. And obviously, I had plenty of experiences in my life not leading myself well. And I think, I've never positioned myself as a leadership expert, right? I mean, I really approach my coaching with individuals from a place of authenticity. Mm-hmm. I think we overcomplicate leadership. And much of what we do in life, I really think when people are leading others, they want to know 3 things. Do you care about me? Are you willing to help me? And can I trust you? And the only way you get to that point is by being authentic and sharing your story and people recognizing, hey, you know what, this person has challenges just like I do. And sometimes alcoholism comes into play because there are plenty of people in the business world who struggle with that, right? But set that aside for a moment. I am very open about sharing my experiences as a leader with multiple organizations in Fortune 50 and higher education in the K through 12 space, et cetera, where I made many mistakes, right, as a leader, and sharing those instances and what I learned from them and how I could have chosen differently to better lead them. And I think that increases people's trust with you. It increases your influence with them, and people see you as real and authentic. And that's what we're looking for. I mean, in a world where we're so caught up in social media, where people are sharing the best versions of themselves, their highlight reels at the end of the day, you know, we don't connect with people through our successes. We connect with people through our weaknesses and our struggles. And that's where we meet. And that's where real change can begin to happen.
Mm. Yeah. And the change starts within ourselves, as we're wanting more for ourselves. That's all we want. We want to feel better. We want to have a life that feels free and open. And both of you and you sharing your stories about cycles, whether it's addiction, whether it's, the overwhelm, the pressure of life. I mean, it's real. People are experiencing that now. And knowing that we have people in here on LinkedIn, right? Or to reach out to connect with, to learn from, is so refreshing, especially to amazing, authentic men such as yourself, Troy and Nathan. This is why I was like, oh, I need to get both of you on here. And it seems like two opposite ends of the stick, right? A cancer survivor that wrote a book, and then a business coach, but you both share that common thread of how addiction touched your life and how you shifted that, you broke that cycle, and now seeing more possibilities, come forward in your life.
Yeah, and my experience relates kind of similar to what Troy just shared about, finding out his cancer diagnosis and struggling through that. I mean, I had always wanted to start my own business, and I would not have been able to do that had I not overcome my battle with alcoholism first. Because when I started my own business at the age of 35, I mean, anybody who's a business owner knows the challenges and struggles that come with that. I would have not been in the headspace to navigate that, having walked away from a 6-figure job with a stay-at-home mom and 2 young children, wondering where the heck is the money going to come from? Because I would have definitely easily used that as a crutch. So instead of using alcoholism as a crutch, I really had to just pay attention to what God was blessing in my life and what God was not blessing in my life, and just listen to my intuition and move in those directions. And by his grace and mercy, he opened up doors for me that I could not have opened up myself. No way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it starts with that trust. Yeah. I saw you nodding also there, Troy. What do you have to contribute?
Well, just the pressure and trials and tribulations of starting your own business is like no joke, right? And it's I don't think that it's a coincidence that, Nathan, you say you run into this with business leaders, because not being able to deal with pressure well is I think a pretty big issue with people who struggle with addiction. And when you make that choice, like take it on yourself, that I could imagine how that would have been nearly impossible, because you got to be on it, you got to be with it, and really brave to do that. And so kudos to you.
And also, I just want to celebrate everybody that has chimed in here too. We have, of course, Mike Asherbranner and the Hounds of Business. We have Halea, she popped in as well. So thank you for being here, Leanne. And Samantha, you are amazing. And she shared some great insights too. about addiction and being in circles, and Cynthia talking about her real estate, being caught up on, in that hamster wheel of performance and having that pressure. That can be an addiction as well. So there's so many different ways that addiction can show up in our lives at any time, and even social media, and can you put your phone down?
Yeah.
That's real now.
Yeah.
And so just being aware of the behavior. What is this? How is this benefiting me? And I think, Nathan, you brought that up, didn't you, about the benefit, right? And what am I receiving from this? And the circles that we hold, the people that we're connecting with. You said that, Troy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so important because everything starts with us. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. What last reflections or insights do you have to share with our audience today before we go?
Yeah, I think people ask me, how are you able to stay alcohol free now? And I'm very honest in my reply. It's literally a decision that I still choose to make every single day, and I choose to show up intentionally versus accidentally. It's not easy. There are still days where I drive by a liquor store, and if I'm having a bad day, that I'm tempted to go in and buy a fifth or something like that, right? And if somebody's listening to this today and they're struggling with addiction, don't look at it as an all or nothing. I mean, if you're drinking, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to point out is if you stop drinking for 2 weeks and then you relapse and you have a couple of cocktails, don't beat yourself up, right? That you are a failure or something like that. What we're really looking for is progress. Very few people are going to be able to just pour it down the sink and just stop drinking cold turkey. It just doesn't really work. Doesn't really work that way. And even I did that for 7 years. That worked for me, but what happened? I relapsed, right? So I had my limits as well. So just be intentional, make those decisions every day, and give yourself grace. Don't be so hard on yourself when you fall to temptation and you do order that drink or two when you're out with friends, and just pick yourself up and start again tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that, like one of the big realizations that I had was that asking for help is a sign of maturity and not weakness. I felt a lot of like kind of faux masculine pressure to not show any weakness, and that did not serve me very well. And so I have now come to realize the maturity it takes to ask for help, and that that's okay. That's like a good thing to do. It doesn't mean that you're less than or weak or whatever else. I mean, everybody needs help. Everybody's struggling with something, and it's okay to ask. And guess what? Like, if people ask me for help, I'm thrilled to help them. This is like a big Simon Connect thing, right? So like, yeah, I love helping people, but then if I don't ask anybody for help, then I'm like robbing them of the joy of being able to help me, right? So so ask for help and be happy to help when others ask of me has been really helpful.
Thank you for extending that hand for anyone who's listening now or in the future. It's really important. You're not alone, such as the halt. I love that method, Troy. And so, Nathan, how can people reach out to you? How can they connect with you? And also, is there anything on the horizon for you? What's happening for you?
Yeah, people can find me at leadempowered.com. And, hey, if this resonated with you today and you need help, I mean, I'll give people my mobile number. It's 918-851-7246. Call me, text me. I am happy to help in any way I can. And right now I'm really excited about Lead Empowered TV that you were on, April. I launched that in December. It's a show where I feature small business owners and thought leaders, and we have empowering conversations that transform how we lead, work, and live. So if you're interested in being a guest, you can learn more about that at leadempowered.com. /TV. And I'm so excited about what has transpired with that show. Only 2 months in, we have over 40,000 views
I know, it's
on YouTube,
amazing.
almost 300 subscribers. So I really feel like that is being blessed. And I just love creating content and that helps people, whether it's business ownership, the way they lead others, or just, lifestyle choices like what we're talking about today.
Exactly. I so appreciate all the work that you're doing. Wherever you go, Nathan, you are just who you are authentically, and that makes a huge difference. So thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And Troy, how about you? How can people contact you, and what's on the horizon for you as well?
Well, first off, Nathan, crushing it. Nice work, man. It's amazing to see that growth. That's awesome. And April, thanks for having me. And then where can people find me? Like, I'm on LinkedIn more than most other social platforms. So yeah, drop me a line there. And what am I excited about? So this whole process, yeah, Nathan, it's funny. You told stories about going to like high-end dinners and like having that type of environmental pressure. I sold whiskey for 15 years, right? Like that ended up not being the best place for me.
And you probably got freebies, right?
All the time. Yeah. Committed the cardinal sin of Scarface was getting high on my own supply. So, yeah, I left that behind. But before I got it, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I really want to sell whiskey for a living. I grew up wanting to be a writer. So I used this experience to pivot and then wrote that book. But now I ghostwrite for people, and now I'm co-authoring another book that's going to be awesome. And it's with my co-author is a psychologist. He's a clinical psychologist who works with organizations to help them hire better, coach better, like really works with human capital, and is developed sort of think of it as like the next generation of a Myers-Briggs exam or something like that, but from a clinical psychology point of view and not an institutional or organizational psychology point of view. So we are deep into that book, and that is what I'm most excited about right now.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that you're co-authoring, and I can't wait to read that one next. And I put up your LinkedIn link there for people to connect with you, Troy. Yes. Wonderful. And as we close today, I just want people to really, again, reflect about how possibly, addiction has touched your life, and we're here to break these cycles, right? We're making different choices, just even shifting the script a little bit about being curious. What would it feel like if I just paused before I blank, whatever that is? I bring in curiosity, right? Because curiosity holds the key. It kind of eases that pressure, that tension that we're carrying in ourselves. And we become a little bit more open and understand that there are opportunities and possibilities for us as we're learning to navigate through life, right? We're going to have ebbs and flows. Things are going to come and go, but it's how we show up for ourselves first and foremost. And this is what living with intention is all about. So thank you both for being here, Troy and Nathan. I so appreciate you. Please reach out to these amazing, courageous souls that bore their hearts today and wanted to be here to give you more insight, to let you know, yes, it's possible to break those cycles and see what's on the horizon for you and in your life. So until next time.
It's hard to help people. It's hard to help people when we hide.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, April.
No more hiding.
Yeah.
Be well. And thank you again for being here. Thank you for tuning in, and DM me if you're curious about Bali. Until next time, be well.